what makes a great person, what makes a great not only scientist. I think the invocation song chosen was appropriate because Kore Undrumillai, that was a song by Rajaji, Rajagovalchari, of course in the name of Lord Balaji. But when I look upon Dr. Borlaug, he belongs to the same, he's a godly person. He can't see any fault at all, totally honest. He will not think one thing and say one thing outside. That sometimes many people will try to attack him because he is a very outspoken person and did not have double views on matters. He will express his views boldly. A remarkable person. So he had this experience from the farm, the bad days of the farm, what is the fate of a farmer if there is no assured market. This is why, although he was a brilliant scientist, he could take a holistic view on problems relating to agriculture, which made him different from the others which are there. There were 5 guiding principles, according to Dr. Borlaug himself, which guided him throughout his life. The first is give your best. In whatever you are doing, give your very best what you can do. Secondly, believe you can succeed. Have faith in yourself. Don't think that you will fail. Believe that you can succeed, that we shall overcome. You know, the Martin Luther King own philosophy of we shall overcome. We will overcome the problem. Face adversity squarely. Don't put it under the carpet. If you have a problem, if there is a difficulty, if there is something happens which you don't like, but don't duck it. Don't duck it. Don't put it on the carpet. Face it squarely. Be confident that you will find the answers. In other words, if there is a problem, there is also a solution. Therefore, how do you really identify the solution to problem? Be confident that you will find the answers. It's very important in science. That is how everybody, Watson and Crick, when they discovered a double helix, they went ahead. They wanted to know what is happening and what is the molecule of the DNA molecule. So all great discoveries have been made by this principle. Be confident that you will find the answers. When problems arise, then he had some wrestling background of Borlaug. Therefore, you can go out and win some bouts. You win some laurels in whatever you are trying to do. I think they are good principles which all of us can keep in life, of trying to face problems squarely and have confidence that every problem has also a solution which we can find. Now, I first met him and Dr. John Niederhauser. You will not know Niederhauser because he was one of the great potato scientists. He also received the World Food Prize. They both were working the Rockefeller Foundation program in Mexico, Borlaug on wheat and John Niederhauser on potatoes. They both gave lectures at the American Institute of Biological Sciences meeting in Madison, Wisconsin, University of Wisconsin, where I was then a postdoctoral fellow. I also had given a paper in that particular meeting. So I was fascinated by these 2 lectures. Norman Borlaug talked about a new method of containment of rust. All the 3 rusts, the leaf rust, the stripe rust, and the stem rust. These are 3 important diseases of wheat. In the past, today we don't realize because we have assembled a lot of genes against them, for resistance. Formerly it was doing a great deal of damage. You should read this very interesting article in Science on the 8th May of 2000, it is in our library, 8th May of 2009. It is called The Famine Fighters' Last Battle. The Famine Fighters' Last Battle. Again, I would like you to read all this because you may not be wheat or you may not be rust. But I think as a young scientist, you should get what is the motivation behind a person. And he started the Borlaug Global Rust Initiative and C. Obregon in Mexico. The goal of this Borlaug Rust Initiative, Global Rust Initiative, is to check the spread of UG99 rays of stem rust, which has now reached up to Yemen from Uganda. UG99 is Uganda 99. Year 1999 is the year when they identified it. It was original origin of Uganda. It is now almost. And fortunately, in India, we have a number of lines which are resistant to UG99. and so we may be able to manage it if it comes here. But it's one of the most virulent races and did a lot of damage in Africa. With the result, Dr. Borlaug wanted to warn other countries, wheat-growing countries, because these can spread very fast. You see the H1N1 now, it's all these pandemics, H5N1, they just spread anywhere. Same is true with reference to plant races. They can go very fast. This was in March 2009, when he went to see Dar Obregon. He put a chair in the midst of the wheat field and sat there for hours and hours. He could not now walk and so on. But watching this, and a whole group of young people surrounded him and talking to them about the rust and how to manage it and so on. So the science article is called "The Famine Fighters' Last Battle." Last battle. It is not a. When we started our program of high-yielding varieties of wheat in 1963 was the first year. Dr. Borlaug came to India in March 1963. March 1st he came. He and I traveled all over the wheat belt. He said, let us not sit in Delhi. He didn't waste even one day. He was there, and then we pushed off. Went to Pantnagar, Kanpur, Bihar, Uttar Pradesh, and Madhya Pradesh, Indore, Ludhiana, Punjab. We saw, he wanted to get a good idea of the wheat growing. Every night we used to stop in one town. Next day, talk to the villagers, talk to them. He was very keen to know their perception, why the yields are not going up, and so on. It was an interesting experience. And March 24th, we arrived in Delhi. At that time, what is now called genetics division, it was called the botany division of IARI, whom you know, had a lovely lawn with a lot of roses bred by Dr. B.P. Paul, the great rosarian. And my wife had arranged, because 25th March, those of you remember the date, it was his birthday, he didn't know that. Suddenly, Mexican music, Mexican food, everything was served. What Borlaug did was very interesting. He had two centers, one Ciudad Obregon and the other Sonora. Sonora is on the California kind of coast there. The conditions of cultivation and growth are very different. One is milder temperature, long days. The other is like a short temperature. So he grew F1, F2 in one place, made selection, F3 in another place. It's called shuttle breeding. In fact, Dr. Siddiq, A.S. Siddiq and I did it in the case of rice between Delhi and Aduturai. One of our varieties called Kannagi, very widely adapted. It did as well in Tripura and so on, Pusa 221. So shuttle breeding, when you want to have some wider adaptation, and so Borlaug got rid of the photosensitive character and thermosensitive character. Then he started the work on wheat, spring wheat and winter wheat, called Veery lines, very high yielding. In fact, Sanjay Rajaram, he took a number of students from India. One of the first he took was George Varghese, one of my early PhD students. He was so impressed with him, so he asked me, do you mind giving him, you have got so many people. So next year he took Sanjay Rajaram. Several people from IRI, because he used to come there, observe these young people who are hardworking, who are shirkers and so on, and then he tried to take the best of them. So at one stage in Simit, most of the important people, breeders, whether it was for wheat or maize, all of them were Indians from India, mostly from the Indian Agricultural Research Institute, New Delhi. Borlaug had no patience for people who will not exchange their material, because in those days, you see, if there was an IPR, intellectual property rights, many of Borlaug's discoveries, like for example shuttle breeding, he could have patented it. And but those days the question of IPR didn't arise at all. They were all public good research intended with public funds for public purpose and not for any private purpose. So social inclusion in technology access is a fundamental principle, is a fundamental religion. Social inclusion in technology access is exceedingly important. One thing was clear to Norman Borlaug from the beginning, that unless there is synergy between technology and public policy, you will not be able to take the technology out. Technology will remain inside the lab, if you don't have public policy. This is why, whether it is synergy between technology and public policy, seeds, fertilizer, water, energy, and above all price for the farmers. These are all essential ingredients of public policy. Now, the other thing he could not, Dr. Borlaug, as I told you, could not stand was hypocrisy. So in the summit he said, let this meeting be adjourned for 2 days, during which all the ministers, where they have been speaking, we are doing this, we are doing that. One of the best speakers is that Robert Mugabe, the man who does the least for farmers, will be the loudest in terms of, and then all that they will end, if it's a developing country, they will end by pleading with developed countries for more aid. That's all they want. They get more aid and so on. They don't say what, they will exaggerate what they are doing. So Borlaug was tired of it because he knows the situation at the ground level. Let this meeting be adjourned for 2 days, during which the assembled ministers should abstain from eating, and further should not have anything to drink for 24 hours. He said don't drink water, anything, 24 hours. On the third day, the conference can resume with the participants having understood what hunger and thirst means to a human being. After 48 hours of fasting and 24 hours of no water, then he said there will be some realism in that talk. At the moment, they are all reading out some speeches given to them by their secretaries and assistants, and absolutely no emotion, no involvement. Again, in November, if any of you go at any time for these meetings, you will see what is happening there. It is wining and dining and talking about the poor people. We must have, in the name of the poor, the atrocities which are committed is really very sad. Then in Delhi, he said in 1966, the peak year of PL 480, it got him into trouble with the American embassy. The ambassador didn't like his statement when he said, it came out in all the media, so far as India feeds itself with imported PL 480 wheat, there will be inadequate interest in helping Indian farmers to produce more. Now, what were his last words? I asked, I spent a day with the family. I could not miss the opportunity for meeting him. Apparently, I asked a couple of times, has Swaminathan come or not? So unfortunately, I reached too late. But fact remains, he said, take the seeker to the farmer. You may say, what is a seeker? Just 2 days before, one of the agricultural engineers or scientists has shown him a soil testing machine, a small meter, which can seek information on nitrogen status, phosphorus status, and so on. And so he was very impressed with that gadget of soil testing, a small gadget by which they can measure. I also said, what is seeker? Seeking information on the content, on the soil fertility content and so on. So his daughter told me, just before he breathed his last, he said, take the seeker to the farmer.